who needs a hero? In everyday life, we kind of wish there would be some sort of person to save us from our monotonous struggles. We go through so many conflicts in our lives every day, every hour, and every minute that we kind of want to break, but no one is going to come to save us. We have to deal with our own problems, and there might be some help here and there. Of course, if you have a good rock, like your parents, to maintain your balance, that is obviously good, but not all of us are blessed with that fortune. However, imagine if there were heroes just like that in the real world that were meant to inspire and pick us up off our feet. Yes, they're only a thing of fiction, but it doesn't mean they're any less aspirational. While other heroes are kind of there to show us what it means to struggle, a Paragon, the characters that I will be talking about today, that archetype, shows us what it means to believe despite the struggle. They do not need to be realistic like an anti-hero at all. All they need to be is true to themselves, because a Paragon is not about perfection or about understanding the world on some greater level better than anybody else. They're not above anyone. It's about faith. Faith in people and faith in the idea that people, us, humanity, can do better. In other words, a Paragon is an ideal to strive towards, and what better ideal there is than the man who's basically a human plant, a solar battery, the light in the darkness, to guide us when it is so dark around us that we need a shining light to carry out the blind. And that is Superman, the GOAT, Kal-El, Clark Kent, the man who sees the light. What makes him special, I've been thinking about Superman a lot recently, and I've been thinking about people who still have, in the biggest of 2025s, the opinion that he is boring. I'm pretty sure the Superman movie that came out today, whether you like it or not, it showed the world that Superman is just as, if not more human than everyone here. We can't use the relatability card of Superman because he acts just like us. He has powers that are way beyond us, however he fights threats that are equal to his level, if not more, and he has to strive to become better. And he sees humanity as a lesson. We teach him as much as he teaches us. But the thing that makes him special is not his strength, his flight, it's his eyes. But what do I mean by that? I'm not talking about his heat vision or his x-ray vision or even his ability to see in higher dimensions. Somebody, Grant Morrison, whoever it is, bring back the 4D vision, because that was glorious. But at the end of All-Star Superman is where I really started to click with Clark, because Lex Luthor temporarily gained his powers, and suddenly he sees what Superman sees. He sees how every single being glows with an inner light, and suddenly all of us are connected. We are a tapestry, a web. If something happens to one part of that web, it creates destruction across that whole ecosystem. He sees destruction that happens to humanity as the greatest sin that could possibly happen. Even one person being lost is enough in his eyes to let loose his unbridled rage. And I know a lot of people like to say that Superman is hope core, which is totally fine, but there is more nuance to his character. Even somebody like Mark Waid, who likes to take out those hopeful aspects of a character and put it on the printed page for everyone to see, he knows that Superman feels too much because his connection with humanity is so pure that if anything were to happen to them, it will set him off. That is his struggle. But going back to Lex's struggle, he is overwhelmed with this new perception. He starts crying for the first time because he is enlightened. He sees something else. He understands. He sees the world through Superman's eyes, and its beauty literally drives him to tears. That is what makes Superman who he is. He doesn't see people as weak or flawed or small. He sees us as brilliant, as I've mentioned before, why he takes lessons from us. And it makes you really understand how ingrained the humanity is on a biological level, because even in that story by Daniel Warren Johnson, where he goes around the earth and we see the distillation of his parents, Martha and Jonathan Kent, when they taught him to be a good person, it wasn't just their influence, it was already deeply within him. That is the true heart to why he went around the world saying to everyone there that he is so proud of them and that he loves them, because his perception, he even says this in Superman 3 or Superman 4 with Christopher Reeve, that he wishes humanity could see the world how he does, because it's just one world and all of us will be better off just helping each other, helping your fellow neighbor, instead of fighting each other. You'd realize how useless all of that conflict really is. Unfortunately, we don't have the eyes of Superman, but another cool ability, which is introduced, I'm pretty sure, by Elliot Maggin, one of my favorite Silver Age Superman writers, is that he has the ability to see a person's aura. To him, every person shines like a star, glowing with potential, with goodness. So when that person dies, their light goes out, their aura fades, and they become dull, gray, and empty. Imagine seeing the world itself in full color, but then somebody who's dead is completely black and white. It will stand out to you on top of the fact of looking very gross, disgusting, and vile. For example, if you saw somebody get shot in the head, for us, that would look really disgusting, but for him, it is dialed to 11. It would be the equivalent of seeing somebody mutilated, decapitated, and all of that across their entire body. That is what Superman sees. A normal hero, when they see atrocities, they would feel really bad. But Superman, through his biology, as I've said before, feels it much worse. That is the burden that he carries. The weight of the world weighs heavier on his shoulders, but he is the only one who can lift it. And this really tells us why he has a no-kill rule as well, because this is instinctive compassion. He sees the beauty in everybody, and losing that light hurts him on a level that we could not imagine. Even food, seeing animals die like rats, like pigs, like beef, hurts him. And over the years, he had to learn how to dull it out, but he can't do it completely. And speaking of dulling out, you have to remember that he has super hearing, and it makes it even harder. Every cry for help he hears, every scream, every whisper of fear, and he knows that he can't save them all. He can't be everywhere at once, and he had to learn how to tune them out. And even that fact, for the sake of keeping his sanity, still hurts him. He can't win. He is stuck perpetually in a lose-lose situation. Imagine that guilt and that burden, and yet he wakes up every day and tries anyway. He still tries to be that beacon of hope for humanity. He still tries to be that person, as Jor-El said, to bring them behind him so that they can race with him, so that one day they can join him in the sun. That is the point of Superman. He is not boring. He is, in fact, lonely. He's heartbroken. As the great Christopher Reeve said, I wish you could see the world the way I see it. That is not arrogance at all. That is perspective, and what makes Superman so special among every other Paragon there is. Now, how about the man who throws his mighty shield, Captain America Steve Rogers? And yes, I will not take any slander from anybody. I was on Team Cap since 2016. I'm not a bandwagon, and I wasn't going to be on somebody's side just for the sake of Black Panther and Spider-Man. I have morals, but of course, at the end of the day, Iron Man and Captain America had things that they were right about and things that they were wrong about, and I'm not here to talk about that whole fiasco and discussion. I'm here to talk about what makes Cap so special, and to me, he is a story about weakness and being told at every single step of the way that he can't be something greater. He started off as a skinny kid from Brooklyn who refused to accept the verdict that the world placed upon him, right? He had so many health issues. He was malnourished. He had not a single strength bone in his body, but that didn't stop him. That didn't stop Captain America from becoming stronger. And what's really the same with every single Paragon there is under that archetype, he became Captain America because of his moral imagination, which made him refuse to shrink down to being unseen. He had a voice and he made sure to use it, because if you don't use it, you're going to lose it and people are going to trounce all over you. The Super Soldier Serum itself amplifies everything in the body, physically, but also your character. That's what gets amplified the most, and that is the crucial part about him. His heroism was chosen, it wasn't granted. Anybody could have been given that serum and they would have turned into a monster. Steve was the greatest moral choice. And for the most part, he is the most ethical man there is. He has an unwavering spirit that calibrates him and shoots him in the right direction towards what is right. If he's not written by an X-Men writer, that is exactly his characterization. As a character, he is quite fascinating though, because he is literally draped in a flag, but what does that mean? Does that mean patriotism, to loyalty, or to doing what's right? He said before that he is loyal to nothing but the dream, the American dream, to help out your neighbor so that we can build a better community, to not throw a hand in violence for no reason. And even in the most tough moments where there's like government conspiracies or Hydra and their revelations, he refuses to let patriotism become a blank check for abuse. That's what makes him dangerous in those power situations, and very comforting to the rest of us, right? To those, the powers that be, he will beat them down. He will dismantle all of it. But to normal people, the rest of us, he insists that the love of a country must mean the love of the people in it, and not blind loyalty. Even in Civil War, which probably marked the toughest and greatest decisions that he had to make in his entire career, that registration fight really crystallizes what I believe to be that Paragon problem, which is, being a Paragon, does that mean compliance with authority or resistance to it? Superman, taking a page out of his book, was a champion of the oppressed. He didn't let anything stop him in his crusade to fight injustice, and Captain America is just like that. Cap chooses having a conscience over order. He believes that the moral law is sometimes stronger and should be held at a higher account than the legal law itself, because people have to submit to the government. And what is the government? They are political figures that conglomerated a lot of their powers and coalesced it into one form that is run by an agenda. And those agendas, as Cap said, do change. But this choice has led to very costly side effects, most importantly, losing his friends, his freedom, his reputation, going on the run from people who he once called friends. But that is the Paragon sacrifice, to stand against the tide, even if you might drown alone. But due to his fantastic speeches, you know that there will be a lot of people, heroes or normal people alike, that will rally behind him. He stands firm. He knows exactly who he is. He plants himself like a tree deep within the roots of the earth, and he will not move. He will be that barrier that saves other people. He will tell the other person, no, you move, because he believes in doing what's right even when it's unpopular, even when it costs him everything. He is a paragon, but of endurance. The idea that integrity itself does not bend with time. He has seen time pass by him so quickly. After being frozen in a block of ice, he's seen a multitude of different eras, but he doesn't let that change his beliefs, because he always, even back in the day when everyone is a lot more racist, a lot more prejudiced, he still had a better heart than most. Imagine that though, in a world that changes every second for him, he is that steady heartbeat. He doesn't just represent America, he's that ideal of what America should be. Think of him like a star, like Superman, but he has his own moral gravity, that orbit that pulls us towards decency, even when the world tries to drift away, even when other people are trying to tug you away from him. His words are so powerful that it'll bring most people back to seeing the light. All in all, I think it is really great to have Paragon figures that are deeply tied to politics, because we live in an era where institutions, where authority feel very untrustworthy, and we crave the idea of having that figure who keeps the faith. The idea of common decency, when that is really hard to see when you look around. Cap's stubbornness to back down is very healing, because that moral clarity that he has, he believes that not only is that possible, it is worth sustaining, even if it fails in a traditional social or political manner. Follow your heart, and if you're raised right, it will lead you to the best possible decisions and choices, not just for you, but the people you hold dear. That right there is the lesson of Captain America. But how about we move on to manga, fellas? All of this is just comics, guys. I'm just moving in from one territory to the next. I'm stepping over the line, you feel me? And the character that I want to talk about is, of course, my GOAT, All Might from My Hero Academia. I've seen a lot of people switch up on My Hero just because of the new season, even though the day ones have been catching so much shade from you boys. But now, because every episode is like a 9.4, 9.3, 9.2 rated out of 10, everyone feels like it's okay to jump back on the ship. We don't want you. No, I'm just playing. Honestly, the more people that realize this is an enjoyable show, the better, because those first 4 seasons I think were really good. Then the 5th one came out, that was ass, let's be honest. And on the 6th, it was getting a bit better, and at the very end of it, we had Vigilante Deku, and obviously a lot more people liked that. And season 7 and 8, in my opinion, are on the same level as seasons 1, 2, 3. It's just peak. But I digress. All Might is the symbol of peace, and what makes him separate from everyone else is that he is a paragon born from pain. But what do I mean by that? Not his pain in particular, but by seeing the pain in others. He smiles so that others can feel safe. In effect, All Might be one of the few paragons who knew exactly what they were. A lot of them are kind of like wandering and trying to figure out who their true self really is before they have that jump into being that person that shines a light onto others. All Might did this on purpose. Everything that he's done is very meticulous. He realized that symbols do matter. You can have actions here, you can save people, and that courage will ripple out to other people and create more heroes. It will create the next generation. People will feel more safe if you smile, if you stand tall, so that others can stand behind you. All of this was planned in his head. He went into this knowing what he could be and what he could do to others with the power of one for all. The simple truth and philosophy of All Might is that he knows that hope itself is contagious. And that is what makes it hit so hard when he hits his emote wheel when he says, "I am here." Because those words are a promise that he will not back down. Even later on in My Hero, when he gave his powers to Deku, he had an ember within him, and slowly but surely, every single time he used those powers, one for all that is, he would end up hurting himself, he would end up flickering out those embers until eventually that fire will turn into a cloud of darkness. But he still keeps going. If there's one innocent involved that is in danger, he will fight like his life depends on it. The final battle in Season 3, we saw the ultimate cost is of being a symbol. It is a bodily cost and it is a personal cost, but the sacrifice that he made and the longevity that he had to carry out his plan of defeating All For One gave others the space to grow. Unlike characters I've talked about before like Clark Kent and Steve Rogers, All Might is somebody who realizes that he has to be an actor on a stage to save lives. Everything is kind of a performance. It is performative, but he performs these things as a source of joy for others. He believes that joy is necessary in our daily lives. It's about trust, right? A society that can endure systemic threats can only be realistic as a goal if there is a shared object of that trust. A symbol is that object, and he accepts that. He accepts the theatricality as a moral labor because that image that he projects onto the universe creates a narrative that tells us that we can intentionally cultivate joy, we can intentionally cultivate truthfulness, honesty, hope, so we could produce more ethical outcomes in others, so that more people will be more inclined to pick up the role that he left off. He basically dropped it on the foot of the next generation after he defeated All For One. It is now your turn to step up. Yes, he was pointing at Deku, but I think that goes for literally everybody. Even in the recent season, we've seen somebody like Bakugo pick up the slack when fighting All For One. Legacy is deeply tied to this character, and I think he did a pretty damn well good job into ushering them into a new era. And finally, we have Sonic, the little guy himself, and I know some people are gonna be like, oh guys, actually he's from a video game. Yes, we all know that, he's from those Sega video games, but there's also comic books, either it's like Archie, Sonic, IDW, whatever it may be. Sonic has been in comic books, and there has been a lot of debate about Sonic in these comic book spaces, as we've seen with Wally West and all those fights and blah blah blah. Either way, I feel like a lot of people don't realize how mature he is because the entire mythos is kind of framed or covered in a kiddish umbrella or cloak to make people not realize all the themes that it's trying to push out. And honestly, I think this is the best way to get kids into these deeper discussions, because by putting it as this underlying current under a lot of Sonic media, whether it is video games, comics, movies, whatever, it gets people thinking, whether it is the kids themselves and as they get older and analyzing the material that they were consuming when they were younger, or even the parents when they start seeing this media and they start putting two and two together. Sonic is absolutely a paragon, by the way. I know a lot of people will contest this, but as a character, he works to inspire others, his friend group, the people around him, and in effect, he adds onto their character development and pushes them and the story along. So I think he really works as a paragon because he just wants what's best for everybody. He wants freedom. He might be the embodiment of freedom, actually, not just the freedom of running insanely fast, but the freedom to be yourself, to defy tyranny, and to choose joy in the face of control. He is chaos itself. Off the top of my head, he might be one of the few chaotic paragons that I know. Yes, there have been moments where Superman, Captain America, and All Might were completely tweaked out of their mind, but this is entirely intrinsic to Sonic, right? Chaos Emeralds and all of that. He's also kind of a political character, just like Captain America. He's a part of a group called the Freedom Fighters, like literally verbatim called the Freedom Fighters, and he leads the Freedom Fighters, right, with a bunch of his allies like, Tails, Knuckles, Sally Acorn, and the lot. And these stories kind of lead into insurgency, small bands of people coming together to fight against the technocratic tyranny that is Eggman, Dr. Robotnik himself. And Sonic's heroism, actually now that I'm thinking about it on the spot, is actually very anti-monarch and anti-authoritarian. He does a bunch of like guerrilla movements with his team for the sake of hitting fast, saving people fast, so that he could keep them free to live their lives. In effect, he is the ultimate escape artist. He has the ability to outrun oppression long enough for others to catch their breath, to rally their forces, and then to resist. Unlike a lot of the solitary paragons I've talked about like Superman, his moral power is being very social. A lot of relationships have built up with him, and these bonds really paint a picture of leadership through invitation. He's not trying to pull command. Everyone around him is with him because he's very charismatic. He creates co-conspirators, not followers. He's not like Superman, who has a bunch of like cosmic sorrow, or Captain America, who believes in being the civic conscience. He is what I like to call a liberation paragon, and this is somebody who resists authority by enabling life to flourish. His speed in and of itself is a label, is a metaphor for enabling possibility. His powers and his actions has led other people into leading better lives themselves. If you try to compare Sonic to somebody in the real world, he is very radical. If you look at the politics in our real world, everything is very performative. The pleasures in life that Sonic is fighting to save is scrutinized and monetized. All of this, though, shows us how contagious his light could really be. Thematically, the hope that he inspires onto others shows us that he is a sprint towards something better, and hopefully all of us can join him in that race. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you know when a new video goes live. I know this is a very contentious topic with the idea of what a Paragon really is. Are Paragons boring? Are they really just the baseline character? Is the archetype really anything special? I believe it really is, and it leads to some of my favorite characters being produced in this medium of comics. But yeah, that is all there is for me. See you all later. Take care. Deuces. Peace.